Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to this week's real estate weekly lesson. Recording this one from the mobile office, aka the car. Today, I'm going to talk about something I've been seeing recently with gurus, and I don't really make a lot of like bashing guru content because that's really not my vibe. But I'm just going to say some stuff that I see, and I just think it's ridiculous. So, number one, I see a lot of gurus talking about, and when I say guru, by the way, I mean like real estate influencer, somebody with a ginormous social media following that speaks about real estate investing. That's what I mean by guru. So the first thing I see is there's a lot of just people talking about, oh, well, rentals don't cash flow unless you do XYZ. And when they're saying XYZ, they're saying, oh, Airbnb it, which doesn't make sense most of the time. Or do what is it called? A co-living situation. So that's actually the biggest thing that I'm seeing now is, make it a co-living property. Instead of it renting for $3,000 a month, you can get $9,000 a month because you're renting out by the bedrooms. And I honestly think that might be the dumbest idea if you really think about the logistics and the logic behind that. So let me just unpack that for a minute. Co-living house, number one, most of the time has to be zoned a certain way. So if you're like, actually, I was looking at a deal in White Plains not too long ago, and it was zone boarding house, i.e. co-living, i.e. SRO, single room occupancy. So you have to have zoning usually in order to even do the co-living, and most houses that these gurus are talking about are probably not zoned that at all. Maybe the zoning changes, who knows? But that's the first thing that they don't talk about. The second thing is that you got to spend a good amount of money if you're going to make a property a co-living situation. Because let's say you have a 3-bed property and you can get $3,000 a month for that, which is pretty normal in most areas, in my market at least. If you're going to make a co-living situation, you're going to rent by the room. The theory is you chop the house up, maybe it's 1,600 square feet, and it's a 3-bed currently. You chop it up, i.e. don't add square footage, and you just basically make it from a 3-bed ranch to like let's call it 2 or 3 extra bedrooms on a house that's only 1,600 square feet. And you're going to make that all flow and make sense. And you're going to have 5 small ass bedrooms, or you're going to have 6 tiny bedrooms. What about the bathrooms? People aren't going to want to share a bathroom with 3 other people. That's like living in college. So you're going to then throw what? 5 bathrooms and 5 bedrooms, and it's a 1,600 square foot house? I think not. That does not make any sense. So that's another thing that doesn't make a lot of logical sense is people talk about co-living like, oh yeah, you just rent by the room and you make it a 3-bed, make it a 5-bed. Well, then you got to pull permits and you got to do that construction and you got to get the city to approve it. And that usually will get denied. Or if it doesn't get denied, you're going to have to pay a bunch of fees and the rehab money. It just doesn't make any sense. But the gurus make it sound sexy because that's the only way that people will listen to what they have to say, right? The truth is, if you want to make rentals work in 2026, you got to buy properties at good prices. And you got to buy them at such a discount or have such a strategy where you can add so much value to where you can force the equity or get the equity built in if you buy it deep to where it would still cash flow after you put debt on the property. That's hard, right? That's hard, but that's the right thing to do. It's like eating broccoli. It doesn't taste good, but it's pretty good for you. And then another thing I see people say about this co-living thing, which is completely bullshit, is, oh yeah, and on top of that, you don't have to even treat them like a tenant. You can just treat them like they're a hotel guest, and you do like 30-day stays. I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense either, because if you're going to be doing this in, my area of the country, the landlord laws are not in your favor, right? They're in the tenant's favor, and that sounds good on paper until you try to pull that off in the city of Seattle, or you pull that off in, Newburgh, New York, where it's extremely tenant friendly, and as Jason Aldean would say in his famous song, try that in a small town. Probably won't make it there. Anyways, it's stupid. It makes no sense, and the practicality of it is ridiculous. Now, could you probably pull off a co-living situation with the right property in the right location? Yes, of course. You could obviously pull that off. You could get the right zoning, or you could have a big house that, you could add bedrooms on. You could do student housing, or I know people in Seattle who are not gurus who do student housing and they rent by the room and they make a ton of money. But they're not going online pounding their chest about it. They're just going out and doing it. And they do it in situations that make sense. So if you think about student housing, which I guess is a form of co-living, that makes sense. You have a 4-bed property. You can keep it a 4-bed property, rent it to 4 different college students. Everyone pays $1,000 a month. there you go, $4,000 a month. And that thing on a rental basis, if it was not student housing, probably would rent for, $3,000 a month. So another thing I think is starting to get a little, stupid, I would say, is this idea, and mind you, I'm talking about 2026, current what's going on. People talking about you got to invest nationwide. I think investing nationwide with the way that wholesaling is going, with the trends and the, just the overall stigma I think it has to it, is not the way to go. I think now the strategy that gurus are not really talking about is actually going back to a local market business, right? And being local, going on appointments. Like I just went on an appointment yesterday. I'm going to New York next week, and I'm going to go on, 5-6 appointments when I'm there. Like going out and being a local real estate operator is starting to become cool again. And you can invest in 2 or 3 markets if you want, if you have good reasons to do that. Like I live in Washington, so I invest here, and I also grew up in New York and I go back there all the time. Those are 2 logical reasons why I invest in those 2 areas. But I think living in, Miami, Florida, and trying to wholesale in 7 different states, I don't think that's a recipe really for success. Or just being somebody who does deals in 7 different states, I don't really think that makes a lot of sense now, because I've noticed that, the cost to get deals is still pretty high. The leads you need to get in order to get a deal is still pretty high. And the thing that I've noticed with these, like, fly-by-night wholesalers who try to open up shop into these other areas is they never really understand real estate, right? And that's something where I heard some other guru say some horrible piece of advice like 5 years ago. He said, "Oh, I don't know anything about real estate. I buy low and sell high." And he makes it seem like he's a knucklehead. And this guy's not a knucklehead. He's actually really smart. But he makes it seem like he knows nothing about real estate. And then that's basically getting other people who actually don't know anything about real estate to think that they need to not know anything about real estate to make money. And that's further from the truth than it ever has been, because I hate to be the bearer of bad news for you guys, but if you want to be a multimillionaire real estate investor, you have to know a lot about real estate. Isn't that a novel concept, right? You don't have to be a, licensed inspector by any means, but you definitely need to know how to do real estate, and you need to know how the law works. You need to know how a transaction works. You need to know how to comp and how to value properties. You need to know how to run the repairs. You need to know how to make an offer that actually will allow you to make money. You need to know how to walk away from deals. Like, there's a lot of things you need to know if you want to be a multimillionaire real estate investor. And you can't not know anything about real estate. And that's actually, you guys got to remind me, I got to do a series on, what multimillionaire real estate investors do to be successful, because that would be a good series. I can kind of share in lessons that I've learned and lessons that other people have learned. That would be some good content. So if you want to hear that, let me know. Send me a DM at Grego_37. But anyway, that's my ramble for today. If you are in the Seattle area, just like where I am right now, and you have a deal that you want to wholesale to me and the numbers make sense, I'd love to buy it. Send me an email, greg@velocityhousebuyers.com, and I will see you on the next REI weekly lesson. Take care.